Ladies and gentlemen, I want to first of all welcome all of you here this evening. Obviously, we're all friends of Gwen's. If you who doesn't know me, my name is Panu Wongcheum. I'm the current Vice President of the FCCT and good friends of Gwen as well. I'll be the one moderating the wake. Even though it's very casual, and try to keep it as casual as possible, we have a lot of people who want to speak here as well as from overseas. We have a lot of people calling overseas. So I would not take too much of your time, but I want to start off by introducing everyone to her brother, who's right here next to me, Mark Robinson. He's been here throughout the period that she was ill, and of course through the funeral, that many of you who went. I want to start off with a short remark from Mark to our friends and members of the club. But before we go to Mark, I also want to ask Dominic to quickly talk about the format of the evening, because we have a lot of people overseas and here who want to speak. We'll be very democratic, but Dominic, please.
Okay, so it's, as Panu says, it's a very informal evening. We have something like 30 people signed up for Zoom. They're people that have known Gwen since her entire career. It started in the 1980s. And so they'll be coming online, and I should recognize a few of them. And then Panu will circulate through the room with a microphone so that you can participate. So basically, we're going to play a game of ping pong as far as possible. Mark.
Go to you, Mark.
Thanks. Thank you, everyone. I'm just blown away. I don't know what to say. It was just on Gwen's birthday, I'd sent a message and got a photograph back from the hospital of her waving, saying just a bit of pneumonia and I should be all right soon. And so then that night she did a Zoom birthday party, as many of you probably know, from the hospital. And I spoke with her close friend and neighbour, Sisu, and also veteran journalist Colin Ryan and her partner Steve, with whom Gwen had just been to Ayutthaya and Chiang Rai and come back with infection. And she'd been sitting on her bed when Mai, her intrepid housekeeper, noticed that she looked really bad and called Nung, her secretary and assistant, who came over, and they persuaded her that this was the night before her birthday, that if she went into hospital just for one night, she could make it to her birthday party. So they got her to hospital, and then after that I spoke with the others and just decided to come, whereas Gwen was discouraging me from coming. And so that started, and that was from March 16th I arrived. And so it's been going right through since then. She was in an isolation ward because of the infection, and then she moved to another ward, which was a beautiful private room underneath the King's Mother's ward, so very safe, and great view over Lumpini and the golf course, but she couldn't see it. And then it started with me basically staying in hospital, which is the rule at Chula, and me and Mai sharing the duties by the bed, and calling the nurses when we felt she really needed help. She wasn't in pain, but she needed morphine towards the end for her lung condition. Apparently it's very good for respiratory function at this stage of lung disease. The cancer actually started in her liver. I forget how long ago, but she'd had several procedures and had thought she'd beaten it. But yeah, that's another story. And then she was in and out of consciousness and lucidity. She would perk up incredibly whenever anyone visited and not let them go. And I had to sort of ask people to leave while she's talking because she wouldn't let them go. And she was just getting exhausted, but she needs you all. She thrives on you all. So, I had to try and protect her, but also let her, be who she is, and she is who she is to you, and to try and facilitate the continuation of her project, which is to keep you all together and to connect you all. So, yeah, we struggled with that. And then there was the earthquake, which I can tell you about later, which we had to half evacuate, rolling the bed through chaos. And then they decided we didn't have to evacuate, so they took us back. But that was really traumatic. And then she recovered from that, bounced back from that, declined again twice that night, and left us on the Saturday morning. So it was mercifully actually rather short, although incredibly intense, and I've lost all sense of time. But I'm very glad to be here. I'm glad I came, and I'll hand it over now back to Panu. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. I hope that you see how important your sister is to all of us this evening. I would like to go first to someone here. Do we have a first volunteer who wants to speak first? Who want to speak? Marwan, why not? I'll speak last.
Thank you. I think most of us who known Gwen heard about her brother, but never got a chance of seeing him. And I think it was very touching to see Mark care for his sister in his final hours. And I think, Mark, all of us really appreciate what you did coming in. Thank you very much. And yesterday I was a bit teary-eyed when Lyndall was speaking about Gwen being feisty to the very end, calling Mark fascist, because he refused to Gwen to have a smoke at the end. But there's another side of the sister-brother relationship. See, Mark's a very talented guy in many respects, including being author of many comic books. And my wife, Naoko, was fortunate enough to run into a small bookshop in Asakusa, close to where he lives, and found his work on the shelves, and it was Mark Robinson, and it struck her a familiar tone. And she brought the book, and we were discussing it with Gwen, and she was very effusive about her brother. And what struck me when I was listening to Gwen was to go back to how Nikkei Asia or Nikkei Asia Review evolved. I mean, it was here on a September afternoon in 2013 when she asked me whether I'd join a group of foreign correspondents she was putting together to launch this publication. And here we are in 2025, the publication has taken off. But Gwen's strength, for those of us who joined Nikkei, was her capacity first to tell us very bluntly when our stories were shit. But more than that, in any publication, as journalists would know, you have the stuff that appears on the front pages, but then you have the inside stuff like the life and art section, the culture section, and her little baby, the tea leaves, which she doted on like a mother. She was the one who was responsible for building a stable of freelance journalists from across Asia who she drew to Nikkei's brand. And she did it single-handedly. And what was lovely about Gwen was she would sometimes call me and said she had discovered this great writer and how she pushed her or him to get stuff done. And this kind of work for any journalist is invaluable. So we who've written for Nikkei and who continue to write for Nikkei are really going to miss Gwen, the hard-nosed editor who tells us whether you're writing crap or not. Gwen, we're really going to miss you. Thanks.
Namal,
Yeah, I can hear you.
right, can you come in with a quick comment, give a model,
Yeah.
your usual style?
Hi, everyone. I'm so sorry I couldn't be there. I was at the funeral yesterday, but I had to get back to base and beaming in. But I'm glad to see all of you out there. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so I mean, I think the takeaway I have from I met Gwen when she was with Financial Times, of course, before I left Thailand for DC, and then we were great friends, and And then when I came back last year to Thailand after finishing my stint at DC, the transition was quite drastic for me. And Gwen, like she's helped so many before, she helped me a great deal in terms of well, coming to terms with everything and welcoming me back to Bangkok and stuff. And back in the day, we traveled in Burma a few times, and that was like really interesting. Gwen, she was amazing. She was so demanding, so exacting and demanding. And like Marwan just said very eloquently, she saw through bullshit and she called out, and there was no malice in her. She was thoroughly professional. And even though sometimes on the road in Burma, we squabbled a lot. And she sort of joked, and I wrote this on my Facebook page the other day. She kind of joked that we were like an old married couple squabbling all along. But, we were really good friends, and it didn't make a difference, right? And what she, in my last birthday, we were the same age. I turned 65 in December, and she turned 65 just after she got into hospital. And last December, she forced me to come down to Bangkok to have a sort of birthday get together. And she dragged me to the FCCT, and then she dragged me to a restaurant where everybody sang happy birthday. And I was quite embarrassed, but deeply moved that she should actually do this. And she gave me a book of poetry, which is over here, Poems for Life, a penguin book. And she left me with, I think, which is a fantastic message. On a tiny card, she wrote, "I hope life is what inspires you in 2025. And I think that's the message I take away from her. Her indomitable spirit, she didn't let all the stuff get her down. She traveled unrelentingly. She ran around. She worked. She just lived life absolutely to the fullest extent imaginable. And that is something which will stay with me for the rest of my life as a message I got from our dear friend. And, I will always miss her greatly."
Thank you, Namal. Back to here.
Thanks, Nick. I'll go next to one of our close friends, Paul. Just quickly introduce yourself and...
All right. Keep it quick.
You can sit down if you want.
I could sit down in front of a pizza. I'm Paul Risley. I'm not a journalist, and it's worth seeing the perspective of our dear friend Gwen Robinson from the other side. I've always worked with the UN, and I can remember in 2012 working in Myanmar with the World Bank as the World Bank prepared to open its office after 20 years of it being closed in Myanmar. And the number one journalist, who had essentially already moved to Yangon at the time, was Gwen Robinson, still then with the Financial Times. And the large poobahs at the World Bank headquarters back in Washington had deigned to send a senior vice president to go to Yangon to officially pronounce that the World Bank was back. And I was supposed to figure out how to make this newsworthy. And I knew that Gwen Robinson would be the key to that. I sent her an email, no response. I left a phone message, no response. I, in panic, used personal connections, people I knew who knew her. I had lunch with her, and suddenly the dam broke, and suddenly it was different. It was a social, personal connection with Gwen that basically never changed. And I remember the World Bank, in its modesty, instead of sending just one senior vice president, they couldn't decide, so they sent 5 senior vice presidents. We had a press release that was 4 pages long because everybody had to be quoted in the press release. And I remember Gwen looking at the press release the day before because I showed it to her to see what she would think of it. And she just laughed, right? And I think she did use the bullshit word at some point, right? That this was saying. So I was completely terrified that she would sort of see through the mask. And sure enough, we had the press conference the next day at the Chatrium Hotel, the biggest ballroom in the Chatrium. This enormous riser filled with 5 vice presidents of the World Bank and a full press corps with all these cameras. It was really impressive. And then there was a microphone on either side set up for journalists. The very first question from a journalist after 5 vice presidents had each essentially said nothing, right? Because there was no announcement. They were just saying, we're back, we're here, we're tourists, right? And the very first reporter to stand up was Gwen Robinson. And the very first question was, she said, so, the electricity, you wrote an opinion piece about bringing the light back to Myanmar. When is this happening? So then there was this long, involved answer that somehow ended with, in December, at the end of the year, we'll be ready. And she said, you're going to turn on the lights in December? And then this World Bank person, in all sincerity, said, oh no, we'll start a process of a multi-bidding 3-year environmental assessment that will result in a contract to look at energy efficiency, right? And Gwen lost it. And she looked at these 5 vice presidents and she said, what are you going to do for the people of Myanmar now? And she really left 5 vice presidents completely speechless. So then I dreaded the next day to see what article she would write. But, she stuck with the thing. The story was the World Bank had arrived and stuff. But, I never forgot that moment of truth-telling by Gwen, right? She was not afraid of any person that she saw in front of her. So since then, that's the way to remember her. And I do remember at one point with a friend, we Googled like the FT Gwen Robinson in Myanmar. And in the space of, I think it was maybe 15 months, like over 300 stories that she had filed, more than one per day at critical moments in Myanmar's work. But she was something that we all aspired to, that level of understanding. So again, we remember our friend Gwen in so many ways, not just journalists, but all of us do. So, yeah.
Dominic,
Okay.
over to you.
So go over to Louise Williams. You are one of Gwen's oldest friends, as you're now going to explain.
I met Gwen when I was 8 years old, which is kind of funny, because she befriended my sister at school and we were all in this kind of accelerated program, and came over to our house to play with my big sister. They were 10, and I was terribly annoying. I was following them around, and particularly Gwen was this amazingly articulate, energetic, interesting, cosmopolitan character. And I continued to follow her in a funny way because she managed to get posted to the Philippines in 1986. So we both ended up in the Philippines in 1986 as correspondents, and she got there ahead of me, of course. And I was just constantly in awe of her ability to navigate her way around this very complex place we'd arrived in our 20s. And we then went to Bangkok together. And over the years, we've kept in touch. I moved back to Australia, but a couple of things in particular. When our good friend Sandra Tones was killed in East Timor, Gwen and I were in Darwin together, and Gwen was immediately organising things and organising a public commemoration for him in Darwin. And also when our good friend Ron was ill, and also a member of the FCCT. So I think what I'd say about Gwen, you will say many, many things about her, was that she was an extraordinary person who got up every day to do something that mattered. And she did it. We all think that we're going to do that, but she actually did it. So that would be, I think, my most important memory of her, and chasing her around on the trampoline. Thank you.
Wonderful. Chris Baker is a historian par excellence.
Thank you very much for asking me to do this. I got to know Gwen quite late and not that well. but to me, she was always just, a force of nature, someone who you could, you never really could imagine quite what she would do next, quite what she would say next. And in all respects, she was someone that I think inspired love in the people which she had contact with. And I think that's visible here, but it's also visible in her journalism. I loved her very much.
Thank you. Karen Emmons, one of Gwen's oldest friends, partners in crime in Bangkok.
But I don't know what to say. I keep thinking about that raspy, sexy voice that everybody keeps remembering, and I keep thinking about the time that it nearly got us killed in Turkey when we came back from visiting another friend, coming back from the airport. The guy didn't understand a thing she was saying, but it didn't matter. He just took a dislike to us and threatened to kill us, frankly, and then he wanted to push us out on the road. But we managed to get back to our hotel. And I remember thinking, I'm never traveling with her again. But now I'd give anything to travel with her again.
Wonderful.
We have someone right here very dear to Gwen, especially the project that we've been working together.
Hi everyone, I'm Yuka from Exile Hub, and Gwen's been on our board basically since the project started in 2021, and when we came out to Thailand after the coup. I remember the first time I met Gwen was I'd gone down to the craft at Kimpton, and it was her and Lyndall, the two of them, and we'd been talking online for a while, for a couple of months at that point. And we met her in person. I was just so impressed, and she was so enthusiastic. She asked about 1,000 questions at rapid fire, and then I think at the end of that day I told her, or at that meeting I told her I want to be like you when I grow up. And I think that's still true. Since before we met, really, Gwen's been such a massive supporter for the hub, for our team, for all the work that we do. She's been a remarkable advocate. She helped us get our first donor, and then fought tooth and nail to get us our second one, and then continued to work with us on a number of different projects, including the Mekong Fund, which was set up between the FCCT and Exile Hub, and a bunch of other organizations, including Free Press Unlimited, the SWIFT network, which was an emergency response network to support journalists. That is to say, Gwen was always looking out for other journalists, and she always wanted to support journalists from around the world, from Myanmar, as much as she possibly could, and she will be very, very dearly missed.
Right.
And I thought that I hadn't left a good impression on her. Then I moved to Bangkok 3 years ago, and she, to my surprise, was inviting me for coffee and lunch, and introducing me to people, as she did for a lot of us. And I was honored and thrilled. Eventually, I learned not to fear her, and learned that she enjoyed it when you snarked her back. The first time that I really went for it, I feared for my life for a second. She had asked me and a colleague where she could get her camera fixed. And we told her, oh, you should go to MBK. One of the stalls will help you. And she said, oh, you can't let me go there alone. They'll rip off a frail old lady. And I said, Gwen, you're neither frail nor old or lady. And when she nagged me, I would roll my eyes and call her mom. She did the same thing to me when I told her to stop vaping. It drove me nuts that she was always late. And I'm Filipino, so that's saying something. And she smoked in my car. But then we started doing that together. She didn't like it when I wore fussy clothes, as she said, or deviated from our common haircut, a straight blunt bob. And then she called me ruthless, which from anyone else, I would take as an insult. But from her, I took it as a compliment. She kept tabs on all of us, and she really enjoyed being one of the girls, hanging out with our group of journalists and diplomats as if she didn't know all of you, cooler people who she could be spending a Friday night with. And we were honored by her stories, her telling us about the 1986 People Power Revolution in the Philippines, where I grew up. And the way that I think of her is she was a foreign correspondent in the oldest, truest sense. When I was in school, I wanted to be like Martha Gellhorn, Marie Colvin, Christiane Amanpour. And I got Gwen Robinson. So I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you, Francesca. Right, we're going to go back on screen and we're going to go up to May Sot to get Jeannie Hallisey.
Thanks, everybody. I met Gwen actually, like Karen, because Luis Williams and I were roommates in Manila. So we knew each other since 1986 in the Philippines. And then we reconnected, of course, again in Bangkok, and of recent years because of her unbelievable commitment and devotion to Burma and all of the people from Burma. And my sole contribution tonight is to bring some of them here to share with you. So there were many, many messages that were conveyed through me, that through the Burmese media, from Burmese civil society, from organizations including Kobo-G at AAPPB, Tet Sui Win at Synergy, Mizima, Exile Hub is there with Evelyn, a lot of the female journalists from Burma, and a lot of the CDM people who are in May Sot, and Gwen supported all of them unequivocally. And the precious thing that Gwen gave to the people of Burma, more than everything that she wrote and all of the panels that she tirelessly organized in the FCCT, was she gave them a sense of encouragement, hope, and the knowledge that they were not forgotten. And as long as she was around, she was damn sure they would not be forgotten. So one of the things that she did, among others, was to help establish an organization that Nikkei Win is directing in May Sot called Joy House. And I'm going to hand over to her. And Daniel Saw, Annalie knows who he is. He's in the audience tonight. Joy House sent a representative who's a very well-known musician from Burma, who's not been in Bangkok before. And he's there to play a piece for Gwen on the piano. And I'm just going to hand over to Nikkei Win. Nikkei Win, you can talk about the Joy Fest that Gwen helped make possible.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your time. So I don't want to take too time because a lot of people would like to cheer us and, want to make a good words for Gwen. So for us, with her help, we can do the most event we call Joy Fest. We can do 3 countries from artists from the 3 countries. We can do the fundraising. So to do that activity, Gwen is the main supporter to get the funding to step this activity. And then the music concert is really powerful, and it's cover all the situations, what is happening in Myanmar through music and message. So we would like to give our hearts. And the last time he sent to me is, he gave our team, me and Joy House and Jenny, she gave a contributions, and then she said, I would like to add a couple of zero from their donations, which means she is a giver. Every time when we met with her, she tried to connect and give everything her best. So yeah, now on behalf of Joy House, Daniel Saw, our artist in the RON, FCCT, and then he will sing a song for Gwen. He is one of the artists who participate in Joy Fest music concert, and that music concert fundraising fund will be go to the dry box that we will send soon to the ITP and refugee in Myanmar soon. Thank you for your time.
Are you ready?
I would like to introduce Daniel So, who is in the FCCT run on behalf of Dry House.
Good. We'll get to him later. We know he's here.
Yeah.
You okay? You want to come
Thank
up?
you.
Good evening. My name is Michiko, and I was Gwen's young sister since a couple of years ago. So, for those who have never seen me, I need to apologize that I'm such a spoiler for the past 3 or 4 days, because I think you've seen me crying maybe 80% of my time. But this is not how I usually am. So just a little bit about Gwen and myself. I used to work with the UN Office of Special Envoy on Myanmar. And back in 2021, Gwen tried to approach me several times, and I've been warned by several of the people that I knew that I should not be meeting with Gwen, because otherwise I get sucked everything out of my body on all the stuff that I should be keeping confidential because I'm such a good journalist. And one night I was invited to this dinner with the director of ICRC and Stefan of ICRC, for those who know him. But I know that Gwen was actually waiting for me to ambush me. So my first encounter with Gwen was like this 9 p.m. at the top of one of the rooftop bar at the hotel. And I was there together with her until 4 a.m. And at that time, the promise that we made to each other is that we don't forge our relationship as the journalist and the UN official, that we will be as individuals. So she shared me with her upbringing when she was having an identity crisis in Tokyo. It must have been very difficult for her when Japan was such a closed society that she was seen as a foreigner. Her time in Sydney, when she was also seen as a foreigner, I heard a lot of things about you, Mark, from her. And it's just that both she and I had this very strange fate with Myanmar, and we did everything that we could in our private capacity to be of any help to the people of the country that deserve so much better. I've heard about all the single treatments that she had at the hospital with the cancer. She asked me to go to Fukuoka with her in December, which I couldn't. She asked me to go to Sri Lanka in February, which I couldn't because I was too tied up with the downsizing that I had to deal with as a result of the policy of a government. The last time that I spoke to her was just a few hours. The last conversation that we had was how unreasonable the whole thing was. And I had just have so much regret that ended up becoming our last conversation. I was so panicked that I cut my finger. I had 4 stitches. I was so privileged to feel that I could get the stitch in 15 minutes in B&H when there are so many people who can't even have access to the medical assistance in Myanmar. So every time I see my stitch, I think of her, and I'm actually glad that Gwen will continue to stay with me on this thumb.
Good. That's a lovely anecdote.
Thank you so much.
We're going to go back to the Zoom, and Bill Meller, who is up in... Are you in Chiang Rai or Japan?
I'm in Japan.
All right, you're in Japan. Always in the wrong place. But you were with Gwen in 1986 in the Philippines People Power. So tell us a bit about Gwen, the young journalist.
Yeah, I'd be very happy to, Dominic. I'd just like to say that from the very beginning of her career, back then in 1986, right from those very early days in 1986, or actually 1985, come to think of it, right up until the very last days of her life, she was just the most generous of friends and colleagues. I was a fireman flying in, and just before the fall of Marcos, and then in those very turbulent first few years of Cory Aquino's rule, when there were several coups against her. I knew nothing. Gwen just had these most amazing contacts. She was a kid, but she just got on so well with the military, with government people. She was just extraordinary, and she was just so just incredibly generous. And that's what she was. That's what she was like then. One thing I do remember, she nearly got me killed, but also she helped me a great deal, because she, during one of the coups against Cory Aquino, when some rebels were held up in one of the military camps they controlled, she managed to talk our way in there to interview the rebels who were about to be either the term was surrender or die. They're very, very dramatic, of course, the Filipinos, as you know. But Gwen basically talked me in there, because the commandant knew Gwen. Everybody knew Gwen. Anyway, she just finally, just in the last few days, actually, just before she went into hospital, she sent me a selfie. She was at Kunsar's old camp up on the Thai-Myanmar border. She was obviously very, very sick, but she was, as Mark mentioned, she wanted to travel with her friend Colleen Ryan, and who was coming up to Chiang Rai. And firstly, Gwen told me she couldn't go, she couldn't make it, but then all of a sudden there was a ping on my WhatsApp, and Bill dear, I decided to join the jaunt. Now hanging out with them, we're thinking of you. And there she was, standing next to a sort of works-like image of Kunsar up on the border. That was just so typical of Gwen, she hanging out with her friends, even at times like that. And I'm just so sorry that I wasn't able to share that moment with her. But thank you for letting me say those few words anyway.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Panu. I just want to say a couple of words that Gwen was my editor. And she was the toughest editor that I ever had. And she saved a lot of us journalists from obscurity by providing Nikkei Asia Review as a platform for us to write, when many of us of an older generation had long thought that it was over. And her ability to recreate regional journalism and edit us in a hard way reminded me of my early days in journalism. So for Gwen to be able to do that in the 2000s was remarkable. I would also like to just, on a personal level, recollect that I had a huge row with Gwen in February. And she was right. And I regret that I never settled that, but she was right. Thank you, Gwen. Love you for that. Take care.
Yeah.
Apparently we have a short.
I'll just butt in here. Yeah. I'm just going to butt in here because what Michael was saying about long-form journalism that died with the Far Eastern Economic Review and Asia Week, which I used to work for, was a huge, huge blow to all of us. And Gwen came back here. She put this thing on the map. She recruited people like me, and I'm very grateful for that. And I'll just tell you one little anecdote from our early days together. With Japanese companies, and I have some bosses in the room, love awards. Awards are everything. So every year, the award season comes through, and we have to write it up. And it's going to make a lot of people on the board smile. But I was assigned to do the write-up for Gwen as Journalist of the Year for SOPA. And that award no longer exists. And so I was busy working on it, and we had all these people connected to us. And Gwen was on a plane to Tokyo. And I knew in those days that that meant she was inaccessible. So I would have 2 or 3 hours to write this thing up without constant inputs and micro-editing going on. And so I'm tapping away on that, and I circulate it. And I get an email immediately from Gwen flying over saying, "You can't say that." So it was like the hand of God. I thought, what the hell is going on here? But anyway, it was a very Gwen sort of situation. And She did just for the club. What she did was bring it through a nightmare of COVID. We technically bankrupted. You would not be in this room tonight if we hadn't come through that. She ran around, she begged money off here and there. It came in, it meant that we could keep the lights on, pay the staff, and it was quite an achievement. And the other thing that Gwen did was, because she was so tuned in with the diplomatic corps, much more than most of the journalists here, was that she brought up the level of membership of the diplomatic corps. It's very valuable to us. This should be the pub of the diplomatic corps. You should be all leaving your embassies and having a beer at the FCC. And if you haven't joined and you think you're serious about supporting the press, join the club. Okay.
Very quick.
Would you like to say something?
So, friends, ladies, gentlemen, it's my honor to just channel Gwen for a brief moment. My name is Edie Bowles. I am one of the ambassador courtiers. I have the privilege, the joy, the honor of living next door to Gwen for several years. But I want to tell you a story. One night I was here and she was moderating a panel back there. And Tony, I know you're going to forgive me for this. I was having a very enthusiastic conversation with Tony Davis out the back. And she started writing me furious signal messages and said, "Edie, shut up. We can hear you down here." So, in honor of our friend Gwen, could we maybe all just stay a little bit quiet for a few moments? We hear all the speakers who have gathered here together to give comments on our beloved Gwen. Thank you.
Right, well, I've got a few more here. Horwath, you've been very patient. Can you come on? Can you hear us?
Yes, no, sorry. I actually didn't realize that we could join by Zoom, so I haven't prepared anything, but I jumped on as soon as I found out we could. I just say I met Gwen in the early 90s in Tokyo when I was a lowly copy editor at the Nikkei, and everybody told me I had to meet Gwen Robinson. But for weeks, she was just never there. She was like this mythical creature. Her presence in the office was sort of signified by a silky cardigan over the back of the chair or her jacket or something. So people knew she'd clocked in for work, but even then, she was always out meeting people, networking, having, 10 dinners a night. And when I did finally meet her, of course, she took me under her wing and, never let me go. So 30 years later, here we are. And, I'll miss her more than I can say. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Abigail. Pan, you've got your hand up. Are you going to behave?
Yeah, I will. This is going to be. I've got a couple of things to say, and this is going to be quite bittersweet. But I knew Gwen coming into the FCCT as a young intern, where I helped do your social media, and I did the weekly newsletter, which, given that Gwen was kind of quarantined in Thailand, became a bit of an obsession for her. And I think you can imagine what working with her was like, with kind of late night calls at 3 a.m, but also we always used to have these Zoom calls, or I'd always hear her yell at Ninja, her cat, which would randomly climb on things. I remember that was a large part of it, but I mean, we spoke daily, and but we also had, some great moments together. I remember her 60th birthday party on the rooftop of Fu John's, which is still my regular jazz bar today. And I remember a crazy night out in Samui where she introduced me to, of all people, the Barry sisters. And they ended up talking, about their time in East Timor and Myanmar and Afghanistan. And I mean, it sounds like such a weird and improbable matchup. This nerdy 19-year-old kid in the same room with with people like that. But I think Gwen had a kind of unmatched instinct for bringing people together, you know, no matter how unexpected and no matter how random. I'd just like to say this next bit is quite important, because I would have liked to say that this relationship continued. But I fell out with Gwen. And I think, as many of you guys know, I think falling out with Gwen was as predictable and pretty constant. Like, you know, it was like a perennial kind of occurrence. And but so was getting back together with her and rekindling old conversations, as I'd heard so many of my friends do. And I'm sorry to say that through my own fault, that never really happened with me. I've been saying to some for a while that I wanted to get back in touch with her, and I was looking forward to reaching out once I graduated from uni and would come back to Asia in a couple of months. And I was too naive to think that I had all the time in the world to do that. And like many, I lived with the belief that she really had the energy to live forever. And I was really grateful to have the opportunity to send her a video message near the end, but it's still one of the most painful lessons to learn. And just to quickly sum up, I think to me, Gwen was three things. That she could be difficult, she could be really, really difficult, but she also had a good heart. And most importantly for me, she really cared. And I'll forever regret not being able to say that to her in person. And it'll be really weird and really wrong to not see her smoking outside on the FCCT terrace. I'll remember you as a remarkable person who found time for someone who's quite lost in life and unsure of where to go next. And got to thank you, Gwen, for some truly amazingly fun and happy moments spent with friends that only you could have introduced me to. So thank you very much, Gwen.
Thank you, Pan.
Okay.
Right.
I'll go to you next then, sir.
Good evening. I'm a diplomat from Belgium, and I arrived here more than 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago, actually. That was during the COVID period, when many networks broke down, and also the period when Myanmar was actually framed in a different manner, from economical to more political. And at that moment, Gwen was introduced to me by my former Ambassador Cartier. And from then on, actually, Gwen played a very important role in building a professional network for myself. And I'm very grateful to her for that, and her tremendous generosity in building and sharing all her people she knows. I've been here so many evenings in this fantastic club, and I don't think there was one evening when Gwen didn't catch my arm and say, "Koen, you have to meet this person and that person." And I'm very, very... So if I know many of you, that's actually thanks to Gwen, and I think many of you can say the same. Thank you very much, Gwen.
Thank you. Are you a member? Is he a member? Just checking. Right, we're sort of beginning to move forward. So the people who haven't spoken, can you just give me a wave if you want to?
Gawi.
And Gawi, of course, will be the first person. Gawi is the oldest and most dangerous journalist in Thailand. I've known him for 40 years. I've met him in every place you would not believe. But that's another story. Gawi, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Dominic. Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry I could not join you. I could have. My health is not that good. Two things about lovely Gwen. We don't have enough time to fall in love. That's number one. Number two, she always said that she knew my wife before myself, because when she arrived in Thailand, she interviewed my wife. At the time, my wife worked for the NGO that helps prostitutes or the sex workers in Patpong. So she always claimed that I knew your wife before you. So you were lucky. When she, to me, also is a motorcycle, because every time we met, she always said I can buy motorcycle. Everybody knows that she always travel around by motorcycle. We met in the battlefields in the Ta Phaya during the Cambodians conflict. I think it's around maybe 1986 because we're traveling by bus together. Since then, our relations, our job keep us together until almost 72 hours before she left us. I was in her position in 2009 when I was bedridden because of ATM illness. So, and what she always wanted to do about me. So in 2018, she convinced me to give her an interview for 7 days. So she wrote a big piece about me in Mekong Review. This is how Mekong Reviews, which I don't think it exists. And this for the first time, she wrote like almost 20,000 words about me here. So, and I was in depth with her. Dominic said that, oh, how could you say that? And when she wrote about me, she always said, Kawi, you must say that. Kawi, you must say that. I always, I will say that, Gwen, you are so forceful in your writing. We always have argument, even until the last day I saw her. She always argue, asking for cigarettes, just like our friends mentioned. But I will always remember her eyes. She looked very feisty when she wants to make the point, and I always remember her face. And I like the picture that Mark picked because it's really demonstrate her really true. Love her.
Greg,
Thank you so much.
You're a brave man.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Kunkawi.
Thank you, Dominic.
Thank you. So I'm just going to be very quick. A lot of, actually, it's great to see old friends like Abigail and Margaret. So I date back from the late 1980s when I knew Gwen in Japan. So a lot of you have spoken about how she was a great connector, which she was indeed. What I can say is that thanks to her great connections, I met my husband. And I'm sure that's true for probably other people. But thanks to her, I met my husband and we had kids. So anyways, want to say a big thank you to Gwen. But one thing you should never do is have Gwen be your maid of honor and give the toast at your wedding with your parents, because you really will regret that. Anyways, it's been great to know Gwen, to know Mark. And so that's why I decided to come all the way from Kinshasa to here, to Thailand, just to be able to say goodbye. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Saya.
I'm Elizabeth. I'm a friend of Gwen and Ginny. I'm working at Dry House. So I know Gwen through Ginny. So since I knew Gwen, she is really helpful to our Burmese community. As you all already know, that she is a good channel to connecting people when they need at the right time and the right place. So it's a huge loss for us to say goodbye to Gwen, and all her legacy will be still remain with us, and we will surely carry on what Gwen wants to look like for our country and our Burmese community. Thank you.
All right, Elizabeth, thank you. We got a minor communications crisis. Hey, Titinan, you just bombed us. Can you speak? Oh, look.
Can you hear me, Dominic?
Yes. Yes, amazing.
Okay.
See your eyeballs.
Okay,
as
sorry,
well.
I'm very sorry. Hello from London Heathrow Airport baggage claim. Thank you for giving me just 1 minute. I'm sorry I cannot be there in person. I really want to. And I want to say three small things. One is that, as we all know, Gwen was very fussy. She was a big fuss about good things. When things were organized, she would want to add something else to it. When things were set, she wanted to change it just a little bit, and she wanted to just tweak it around for even a better outcome. So I remember her for being fussy in a good way, but also sometimes fussy in a not so good way, like when she changes the arrangements, and she brings people that she didn't say she was going to bring, but that was her way of bringing people together. The second thing, she's very loyal as a friend. You know, when Petra, my daughter, was changing school, and Thailand being Thailand, we had to do some lobbying. In the end, it was not necessary, but Gwen was ready to help us, to put everything down and to try to help. That was really something back in 2014. I met her in 2012. And the last thing I say, she really had a think tank career inside her. She really had it in her. She thrived and she cherished her think tank role, even days before she passed, in the hospital when she contracted the pneumonia. She felt so bad, so awful for not being able to participate as a moderator at the Dusit Thani Hotel, big conference we had with Japanese embassy. So anyway, so much to say about Gwen, but I would remember her as a, larger than life, more than the fullest, and dear, lovely friend, and we will miss her. And Isis, I think she really valued Isis, and we loved having her around. Thank you very much.
Okay. Tawin, do you want to speak or not?
Sure, I can certainly do so. Thank you so much.
Titinan, go away.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much. Good evening, and it's good to see you all coming together to say goodbye to Gwen, who's a very kind, articulate, feisty, and a strong person. I don't know her. I haven't known her for that long, and I don't know her that well. But for the brief moments that I have spent with her in Bangkok, and a lot of them was also at the FCCT, made a lasting impression on me. I was there, I'm Los Angeles based and I work in digital strategy and technology, but I was at FCCT to launch a film that I worked on, and she invited us to her place to watch another movie that I had produced and edited. And that's also where I met with Jeannie and a few other people. Rosario, Leah is also on the call, I see. She was just an amazing person. I noticed that she's fond of smoking, and she would go out and smoke quite a bit. And she loved white wine, where I leaned towards red, and we talked about it. And we talked about poetry, and most of all, we talked a lot about Burma and her love for Burma and her love for the people there and what she does. That's something that all of us are aware of. As I mentioned earlier, the impression that she's made would leave me with memories of her for quite a bit. And we were communicating over the holidays just to say happy holidays, and I have not heard from her. And when I learned about her departure, I was so saddened by the nature of it.
Thank you very much, Tawin. Very, very kind of you to put those words in. Right, so we're moving it back into the clubhouse now, and we're going to hear from Phil Robertson. You'll notice that the noise at the back of the bar is finished because we have Phil here not talking at the back of the bar. Anyway.
I do have the capacity to talk very loud. Yes, thank you. Yeah. No. Anyways, thank you very much, Robertson. So when I first met Gwen, it was mostly when she was working for the Financial Times. And she would call me about some story that she wanted. And she'd say, Phil, I need a quote just like this. And I'm like, okay. Let me think about that. No, I need it right now. And I was like, okay, can I get back to you? No. And so okay. So, I was always talking to her, someone who was calling me. She was always calling me for quotes on stories. Partly because I worked with Human Rights Watch for many years. In any case, I really got to know Gwen when she and I were both on the board at the FCCT. And I will say that we're going to miss her tremendously here in this club, because she did an amazing amount of work here on programs. I mean, she was always coming in with like some new author who wanted to do an event, or, you know, a group of Burmese would contact her about some sort of exhibition or program or what have you. You know, she was really a go-to person to do things here. And, you know, I greatly enjoyed doing programs too. And sometimes we'd have arguments. And everybody talks about how blunt Gwen was. I'm fairly blunt too. So we would like sort of bump into each other a bit. But, you know, it was always at the end of the day, I got a lot of those, oh, I don't know about that. I got that all the time. Oh, you know, I'd make my argument and she's like, I don't know about that. But, you know, I knew that she was trying to do things for the club. I knew we were trying to work together. Our general ideas were aligned in the same way. And I knew that she had a good heart and she cared about these things. And that, I think, you know what, as Pan was saying, she cared. And, you know, at a place like this where it's an organization of volunteers. Let's be very clear about that. The reason this functions is because people do things beyond their day jobs. Because they care about issues, or they care about the people, or they care about, you know, the institution. They care about media freedom, which certainly Gwen cared about, and, you know, did a great deal of work to make sure that the Burmese journalists who were fleeing the coup and arrived in Thailand with nothing but clothes on their backs were able to get equipment. You know, she ran this whole effort to get people to donate things, which was amazing. But she also cared greatly about the Cambodian journalists, the Vietnamese journalists, Lao journalists. She was trying to find grants to give money to people. And she was doing this in addition to all the other things she was doing. So it was very impressive. We're going to miss her a great deal. We're going to need people here to help step up and make sure the club continues to do the sort of things that Gwen was doing. And, you know, don't look at me, don't look at Dominic, don't look at Panu. Look at yourself. What are you prepared to do for the Foreign Correspondents Club? Okay? So in the spirit of Gwen, rededicate yourself to the place that she cared so greatly about, and come on in.
Thanks, Phil. Philip?
Oh, another Philip here. I'm in a room filled with hard news journalists, but I'd like to point out that Gwen covered stories in the round about cultures and countries that she was involved in. And most of the times that I met Gwen was actually at cultural events. She managed to fit those in with all of the other speaking engagements and dinner parties that she had. It was at dance events, it was cultural things. And the very last time that I saw her was actually at the launch of a book about lacquerware, believe it or not. And it was a very moving moment. On a personal level, she was still hustling me to write something for the Nikkei, and talked about it, and she rolled her eyes and said, well, I've heard about that story before. So I've got that challenge to live up to. On a personal level, she was a great editor. She was one of those people who would really push the story to be the best that it could be, cutting out chunks that you were precious about and making sure that the story thread came through in the end. But I think it's very important that hard news people look at the cultural angles, because they give you aspects to get at the story through a way that you can't say directly in this difficult region. And she was always good at finding those angles. Thank you, Gwen.
All right, please.
Thank you. I'll be very short because I didn't know Gwen for as long as many of you. One of the first times I met Gwen, and this goes back to Dominic's point, was she invited me for lunch at the FCCT. And lovely lunch. She said she would cover it And I got back to the office and I checked my emails, and Gwen had sent me a lifetime membership for UNHCR at FCCT, which we then had to obviously purchase, and we still have to this day. The second one was when I invited Gwen to be the moderator at a big UN conference with ministers, and I said, this is the best moderator I know. And my bosses said, oh no, but it's a bit difficult with the journalists. I said, trust me, it'll be fine. So I said, Gwen, please, nothing too controversial. So the panel was, of course, on Myanmar. And Gwen comes up, and then the first question, she says, welcome everyone. And she says, why has the UN failed so badly in Myanmar? Which is a perfectly valid question, but a number of people looked at me as if to say, yeah, you might not have a job for very long. The third one was when I had a dinner at my place, and Gwen came, and I arrived at the door, and she was accompanied by a man who I didn't know was coming. Thankfully, it was Mark, and she said, by the way, I brought my brother, I presume it's fine. I said, of course it's fine, Gwen, but... so that was really my pleasure to meet Mark, and it was also a pleasure to get to say bye to Gwen in the last days. She never lost her sense of humor, and she still asked me what my next job was going to be and why I still hadn't taken a job in Mesa. But I think the cross-generational reach that she had, you see young people here to, I won't say old people, but more senior people, and how diverse this group is a testament to the ability that Gwen had to bring people together and create such a great environment.
I'll go next, second last. So I know Gwen for many, many years, and I want to say 4 aspects. For me, what Gwen means to me. The first one is, we can all agree she's quite a character. So for me, she's the old guard journalist. This tough-talking, Aussie lady, smoke like a chimney, and always have a knack for stories. Always suggest, Panu, you should write this. Panu, you got to do this. You got to do that. Second aspect, she was the ultimate networker. Everyone in here are from many different walks of life, right? We have diplomats, we have journalists, we have international organization workers, and Gwen touches many. I've been in a room with her where there were Thai activists. I've been in a room with her where there are Burmese journalists. She deeply cares, beyond many reporters I know, she deeply cares about the stories that she does, that she did. And it brings together people beyond the words, beyond the stories. And I think that was very important. I think in many ways, the club, as we see tonight, and the club throughout her time here as president and beyond, is a reflection, the confluence of people that she drawn in, because she deeply cares about what she does, the ultimate networker. The second last, the rebel. Gwen is quietly always a rebel, always smoking in restaurants, always saying half-rude things to people, sometimes openly, sometimes behind their back. She's also inspired me to rebel at times. We'll be landing in some Thai airport, traveling together, and she'd be smoking next to the non-smoking sign, smiling in front of it, right? And the last aspect, I'm trying to keep it short, is for me, she was like a mother. She was a dear friend. Sometimes can be, as many people said, difficult, but she would really care. We would talk beyond the club. We talk beyond the journalism work. We talk about life, and it's cross-generation. We're from different walks of life. But I can safely say that through the years, that I'm very proud to call her as a dear friend. And in many moments, like a mom, she would call me and said, can you come and pick me up? Do this for me, can you find that? I think Francesca kind of say that as well. So she was a mom. So there you go. For me, the old guard, the networker, the rebel, the mother. Thank you, Gwen. You'll be missed.
Sorry, the final word from our president, Lane.
Yeah. Hi.
Who is late here.
Yeah, I'm
she
late.
rode horses.
Oh, Gwen, I'm told to say Gwen rode horses. But first of all, I apologize for being late. I was having to do journalism, which I'm sure Gwen would have approved of, even if I couldn't be helped. And I'll keep it short just to say that Gwen was an amazing friend. I wouldn't know half the people I know in Bangkok if she hadn't taken me under her wing and given me all that advice. I'm sorry, I'm speaking fairly loud for me. Giving me all that advice. And one of the funny things she would always do was say how hard I was working. And come on. I mean, she would always say, oh, you work so hard. Oh, you do too much. And she was working nonstop all the time into the middle of the night. So she sets an amazing example. She was a great person to know. And of course, we all loved her. And I want to thank everybody for coming out to show their love and respect for Gwen. We really appreciate it. And with that, I'll say thank you.